Hi everyone, I'm Lisa from Down to Earth Gardening, and welcome to today's video in which we are going to create a delightful edible spring container. So my pansies are literally the first annual flower that I plant in the very early springtime, and that is because they love the cold weather. So they do wonderfully in temperatures from 40 to 60 degrees, but even when it drops down to 25 degrees, they're totally fine. They're great in the ground, but they're also great in containers. And I find that when it starts to get warm and they start to wilt and look droopy, what I'll do is I'll take the container out of the sun, because they do love their full sun, and then I'll move it into some partial shade. So that way I can have them a little bit longer if they're getting some dappled shade. So pansies are an edible flower. So I love to use them as a garnish or in my salads, in desserts, some drinks, some lemonade, some cocktails. They're pretty versatile and they come in so many beautiful colors. But today we're making an edible container using the pansies, and we're using some greens. So greens are also one of the first things that I plant, but in my vegetable garden. And so I thought it would be really fun to mix them together to show you how beautiful it can look and vary the texture, the colors, and also the flavors. So for greens today, I have some kale, and I have some Swiss chard. Now this is a burgundy, but you can find this with some bright yellow stems or some white stems, so that will add a little more color. And then I have some red lettuce, and these are just babies here, so these are really going to fill out. And then for my pansies, I have purple. You all know that I love purple, but every year I mix it up a little bit depending on where I'm putting the container, what kind of mood I'm in. But there's so many beautiful colors. I've also picked up some little Johnny Jump Ups in the mix. So I like to vary the sizes, and a pop of yellow. Now you could just do your container monochromatic here, and you could stay with all purples, and that is really lovely. Or you can brighten it up with some different colors. In the past I've done patterns. You can do kind of a polka dot mix. But today we're going to be using these colors. And for my container, I have this really pretty blue container here. This is ceramic. You always want to make sure you've got some drainage holes. I love the depth of this because I'm going to have this container in a mix with some others. So I'm loving the color of this container. It's going to look really pretty with the purple. And I also love that it has a saucer with it. So I am going to get rid of this red here behind me. We're thinking of changing the color here of this little shed, but either way, you know it's going to go with purples and blues. So I like to gather up some stones and put it in the bottom. It's not necessary, but I like to do this for drainage purposes. So just a little thin layer, because we don't have a deep container here. Okay, and then we're going to add our soil. Now I did pick up some potting soil that has some slow release fertilizer in it. Okay. So typically they're a little bit pot bound, and I'm going to break off the bottom, and I'm using my trug here because I'd like to be able to recycle this nice soil for even another container that I'm going to pot up in the near future. All right, and then I'm going to do my placement first before I fill the container up to the top. Just breaking up the roots a little bit. And this is really going to give them a head start here. Now it's funny, I was just looking at some of the tags here, and it says for spacing to plant these 8 to 10 inches apart. So I have to tell you, I love really full gardens and really full containers. So I cram things in there as closely as I can, and then you really do have a beautiful instant container. Okay, so we'll have something that's kind of draping over. Okay, and this in here. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some left over, but that's fine. I can give them to the grandkids to play around with. It's a really fun plant for children too because they are edible. All right, so I'm handling my Swiss chard the same way. I just broke off the bottom there. Get that in the mix there. And I'm going to do the same thing with the kale. Now these are really tiny here, so what I'll do is if I want a fuller plant, I will just buy 2 or 3 of them and plant them together. And you can see here how that makes a little more of an impact. Okay. And then my lettuce here. Same thing, take the bottom off. These are a lot of fun because you're really playing around with proportion, and that just adds a really nice visually interesting element to your container here. There. And you can see here how I'm really just not getting too fussy with it. I'm just playing around here. And recycling some good soil. So we'll do that there. All right, so it's always better with these if you can pop them out from the bottom. I have tugged on them from the top and then broken the plant right off. So I don't recommend that. I'm going to sneak some of these in. Okay, so I packed it in pretty tight, and all I need to do now is just go around and just fill around some of the plants with some soil. We don't want to leave any air pockets here. Okay, so that worked out pretty great. And I have a few of these little Johnny jump ups to give the grandkids, and they'll have fun with those. I always try to save some tags if I can. And that way, well, I buy a lot of plants, so I remember what I purchased. But if I really fall in love with the pot, I'll be able to duplicate it next year. All right, so there we have it. So now for care, I am going to put this in the sun, and full sun, which means 6+ hours a day. I'm going to keep it watered, so 2 to 3 times a week, unless we get some nice rains, which typically we do in the springtime. Now, pansies are especially great for containers because I can bounce them around if I'm using the patio or having some company. I can place the little pots around where we'll be seated or having a meal perhaps. But also, they love the cool weather. They're going to thrive in 40 to 60 degree temps. They'll even do perfectly fine if it drops down to 25 degrees, which you never know in the springtime. It could happen. But then when it starts to get warm, you'll notice that they will look droopy, they'll start to wilt. So above 60 degrees, I will then take the container and I will move it into some dappled shade, and I'll be able to enjoy them for a little bit longer. So I do like to deadhead them. So literally I'm just pinching off any spent blooms here. So just here and there, but very easy care. And they're going to be fun to harvest along with the greens for some salads and whatnot this spring. So that's it for today. I'm going to clean up my mess and water these beauties, but thank you so much for joining me. I love doing these videos for you, and if you like this video, please tap like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we have lots more gardening fun coming your way.